Back in the year 1989, I was living in one of the most dangerous capitals in the world. Walking down the street on my way to a birthday party, I came across a group of men, and at that moment, I sensed I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I ended up with a gunshot in my stomach. This experience proved to be a blessing in disguise later on. Instead of becoming angry or cynical, it made me wonder and ask myself, what makes and drives a person to commit such a violent act against another? And how can violence be dissipated or reduced from our lives, our communities, and from the world at large? Knowing that external solutions for peace are always short-lived, it inspired me to find an internal solution that would be lasting, one that wouldn't be dependent on policy, legislature, or politics. There must be something each and every one of us can do on our own to ensure and foster greater peace in our environment and in the way we live. This led me to the source from which all behavior originates, the mind. In my research, I came across different traditions and practices, but it wasn't until I was introduced to an ancient text that I discovered a precise method to purify and clear the mind of violence. That text is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, written more than 2,000 years ago. The text identifies 4 pollutants of the mind in the way we relate to others that cloud its pristine nature and lead to violence, the greatest pollutant of all. Violence is the impulse to obliterate those who pose a threat to us. Violence comes from fear, the fear of losing what is precious to us, and the fear of not achieving that which we desire. So anyone who we perceive as being able to take away what we have or prevent us from getting what we want becomes a threat and is viewed as an enemy. As a means of protection coupled with a limited understanding of the meaning and purpose of life, we begin to accumulate things, thinking that the more we have, the safer we will be, and consequently, the lesser others have, the weaker they are, the less of a threat they will pose. That's how we come to see those who have more than us as adversaries. We think they are the reasons why we don't have what we want, or they are the ones preventing us from getting it. This brings us to the first pollutant of the mind identified in the text, animosity. But more specifically, animosity towards those who are more successful than us. Our thoughts become tainted by animosity. This ill will towards those who are successful is like a mental disease that robs the mind of its capacity to think clearly and brings doubt and confusion. The next pollutant of the mind identified in the text is cruelty towards those who are suffering or weaker than us. Unable to manage our own pain and sorrow, we become insensitive to our thoughts and feelings. This mental impurity wrinkles the heart and narrows the mind to the point that we no longer see a difference between a material object and a living being. Acts of cruelty are the expression of a person's inner misery, born of anger and unfulfilled desire. Cruelty makes us go after those who are in a weaker position than us. The next pollutant is jealousy towards those who are happy and making progress. The source of jealousy is the desire for recognition. In the same way we want material success, we also want spiritual prosperity, that inner purity that makes our thoughts, speech, and actions be congruent and harmonious. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Envy is ignorance, and imitation is suicide." We can't be like anyone else, nor do we want to. Seeking spiritual recognition, we compare ourselves to those who are closer to their own spiritual goal and personal fulfillment than we are to ours, and we become jealous of their happiness and success. And finally, the last pollutant identified in the text is self-righteousness towards the less virtuous. We spend a lot of time criticizing those who, in the light of our own personal beliefs, are on the wrong path, the ones we consider to be non-virtuous. If we don't criticize them or condemn them, then we simply ignore them or regard them with indifference, which dulls the mind and increases our insensitivity, making us feel superior. Those are the 4 pollutants that can lead to violence: animosity, cruelty, jealousy, and self-righteousness. But the text gives us also an antidote to each of these pollutants. It says that by cultivating 4 virtues in the way we relate to others, we can begin the process of purifying the mind from these mental toxins, which will make more peace in our life and hence in the world. The first virtue to cultivate, it says, instead of animosity, the cultivation of friendliness towards those who seem successful. Here, friendliness is more than extending a hand of friendship to successful people. Friendship in this context is the spiritual virtue that prevents the mind from meeting its own destruction so that we can continue walking towards our destination safely and well protected. It means eliminating the underlying of animosity that makes us fabricate enemies in the external world. It's also transforming those insecure parts of us to dissipate violence and ill will. Then it says, instead of cruelty, the cultivation of compassion towards those who are suffering or weaker than us. Compassion is the opposite of cruelty. Compassion clears the mind and infuses the external world with peace, a necessary condition for restoring tranquility and serenity. Compassion has no room for pity or lamentation. Our compassion must be grounded in wisdom so that we neither grieve for those who are miserable nor get angry with those who cause their misery. Only in this way can we truly be effective in helping, serving, and loving others through compassion. Then it says, the next virtue, instead of jealousy, cultivate cheerfulness towards those who seem closer to their own personal goal than we are to ours. An attitude of cheerfulness towards those great souls who walk among us, towards those who are known for their selfless deeds and contribution. This will allow the mind to regain its ability to peacefully flow inward. And lastly, it says, instead of self-righteousness, to cultivate non-judgment to those who we deem to be on the wrong path, headed in the wrong direction. The attitude of non-judgment is cultivated by giving up our tendency to point out the wrongdoing of others and instead look inward to our own shortcomings. Non-judgment is seeing each individual clearly within his or her own context. When we stop seeing others as a threat to our well-being and we begin to relate to each other through the virtues of friendliness, compassion, cheerfulness, and non-judgment, fear begins to decrease. The more fearless we are, the more non-violent we become, the more global peace there is. Thank you so much.